I have an allergy to alcohol. One molecule that gets into my body, I'll break out and fuck with.
Today's guest is one of Australia's most recognisable media personalities and has been a guest in Australian living rooms for over 25 years. Aside from his broadcast work, he is a passionate advocate for positive conversations around mental health and climate action. Today's guest is Osher Günsberg.
I did a show in Australia called Australian Idol.
I never heard of it. What is it?
It's a singing competition show. It's the time when I'm not on stage, or the time when I wasn't on air. It was the other 23 hours that were very hard.
You've been quite open about your journey with alcohol all the way through to sobriety. Can you share the moment you knew?
The drinking when I was out and about was nuts. But it's the drinking when I was home alone. That's the proper stuff, right? It changes how much I think is a good idea to drink, and at worst, it changes my sense of right and wrong. I was doing things with prescription medication. I've come to find out in later years it was probably called abuse. I thought I was going to get a different ending. I'm just going to get the same ending everybody gets. There's only one way this goes.
What are your go-tos now that have replaced, let's say, drinking?
Look, I tell you, if breathing had as good a marketing campaign as the beer ads that ran in the 80s and 90s that had chicks in bikinis just drop out of the sky the moment they cracked the can, breathing would be a bestseller. During that period, I was told something enormously powerful, and it's that
Hey Balancers, welcome to another episode of the Balance Theory podcast. We're here in the I Want It Yesterday studios in Alexandria, Australia. It's my absolute pleasure, Osher, to have you on the show
Thanks
today.
for having
Welcome.
me. How you going?
I'm really good. How's your Friday been? A bit hectic?
Mate, it is. Yeah, we're recording this on a Friday. It was just one of those where
Fridays.
everything was like, well, it's every day. It's kind of interesting. This is the life I chose. I chose a life that isn't 9 to 5. I chose a life that doesn't have a regular schedule ever, and you have excitement, but then you open yourself up to externalities when it comes to scheduling.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. But I'm grateful to be here. It's a lovely spot. I'm glad to be on your show.
No, it's a pleasure to have you.
Well,
so
yeah.
I'd actually love to know, I saw you shared like a throwback clip to one of your first auditions to go on, TV.
Oh, yeah.
I want to know before that, like, was TV, being in media, was that always something you aspired to do?
I always kind of, being in media, TV was essentially the medium, but I knew from when I was my son's age, we've got 2 kids, my youngest is 5, I knew from at least when I was his age that I just really enjoyed connecting with people through performance. Okay?
Cool.
So
was there something like you did at a young age that made you realise that?
I was 5 years old, standing on top of a coffee table like this, staring at the television in Brisbane. We didn't have as many channels as you guys in the South, and all day long there was this hit show that ran on every network. It was called The Test Pattern, and they just ran classical music under it. And I'm on the coffee table conducting the orchestra I can hear coming out of the television, and imagining myself as the conductor. I'm 5. My dad and mum were very, good about taking us and, exposing us to all kinds of, performance when we were kids. And there was just something about connecting with people through performance that I adored. And to get to do that, though, you had to be good at singing and playing music or something. So I worked really hard at trying to become a really great musician. I played bass and I sang, and then later on, I was playing in bands and stuff like that, and it was just always about being on stage was a thing I enjoyed initially for not the greatest reason. It was more a control thing sometimes. But I really enjoyed being on stage, and I enjoyed connecting with other performers and being in the moment with them and the presence required to play in a band together, and having those moments where the unspoken communication that happens between musicians who've worked together for a while it's extraordinary. It's like when you watch a football team, and this amazing pass happens and you're like, whoa, but they just could read each other and they know what's going on.
They hear each other without speaking.
Well, yeah, or they see that, because they know each other so intimately, they understand who's going to do what. But yeah, and so then radio just became a thing. What you're talking about was the video that I made that I sent to Channel V, which is a now gone music television station it was on cable television here in Australia. And I'd been working in radio for 5 years by that point. which I always kind of found funny because when I did a show in Australia called Australian Idol. It's a singing competition show.
I never heard of it. What is it?
It's a singing competition show. And people are like, wow, what's it like to be an overnight success? I'm like, I have worked 6 to 7 days a week, sometimes from midnight to 6 a.m. for the last 9 years. I'm glad you think it happened overnight. That's where the overnight part was.
Yeah. It's crazy. Like, so many people will look at others and look at it as an overnight success. I've had this recent kind of epiphany myself, but really, even if you going on Australian Idol is what catapulted your career, let's just say hypothetically, for you to be that person that was ready to get on that show and be that host, like it took you all that time to get to that point, and that's what people don't see.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you being on stage when you were in bands, at that point, or for a moment, it was a bit about control. What do you mean when you say that?
Oh, I think it started, that was an earlier one, when I was about 8, I think, 8 or 9. I went to the kind of school that we had an assembly on a Friday, and each class took a turn to do a sketch or something, as a little skit about picking up rubbish or, whatever you do, don't masturbate because God's always watching you. I went to that kind of school.
Oh, right.
And then it was our turn. I think I was in grade 3 or 4, and I had the line, right? And don't worry, it was about picking up rubbish. And I came on stage, and there's like 400 kids just staring at me like koi carp, like that. And I walked out, and I had all these feelings in my tummy, and I dropped the line. It was something along the lines of, don't commit a sin, put it in the bin. They really fucking indoctrinated me with the God stuff. Don't worry, I figured out pretty early on that it was bollocks. And there was this gasp and then a laugh, and the whole place laughed. And I was like, oh. It's pretty much the first high I ever got, I think. It was like, oh, I like that. I want more of that. In fact, I want all of it. I want to get under a waterfall with my mouth open and just get as much of it in I can as I might burst. And because when I'm on stage, I had been I kind of still sometimes am, very anxious kid. I got sent off to a psychiatrist when I was like 5. What do you send a kid to a psychiatrist when they're 5? I don't know what was going on. I can't talk to my parents about it now. But for me, anxiety was a lack of control. But when am I more in control than when I'm on stage? I know what happens next. I get to say what happens next. Like, so initially my coping mechanism somewhat became my career in some ways, because I always found great relief as well, like from connecting with people, yes, but I also found great relief in the intense concentration that it required to be on air, to, I was in radio so long ago, it was powered by steam, and I was working on tape. Literally, when I edited, I had a razor blade and sticky tape. Makes you very good at interviewing, because you understand that for every time you go, tell me, like, you have to cut that out, and that takes a while. So you learn pretty quick. You learn pretty quick how to be concise when you're asking questions in an interview. But it gave me this kind of real sense of peace. And later on, after I got clean, I took a different approach to work now. But even so, I recently finished up working on a show called The Masked Singer. It's basically like the most expensive game of peekaboo ever played. All right, that's all it is. And I would be wearing this thing on my head, and I couldn't see out of it. And I was hiding backstage, and I'd hear the music. There's 500 people in the room. They're like, okay, and I know that different choreography every day. So, okay, I know I have to take 12 steps, do this thing with my arm on 8, and then do this one on 9.5, and then 10. Stop, because if I take 11 steps, then I'll catch on fire, because that part of the stage is going to explode, because pyro is great. But then I need to take 2 more steps and walk through the fireworks smoke, and then pull off the head, and then pull a microphone out, and then do the next 2 minutes with the crowd vibing. And there's 14 cameras in the room, and like, it's absolute serenity to be in that. It's the time when I'm not on stage, or the time when I wasn't on air. It's much better now, trust me. But early on, there was the other 23 hours that were very hard, because my brain has somewhat of an oscillating speed that is quite high, and it requires a certain amount of stimulation. So it's like a ship that's dropped the load in, wherever it's gone, and then turns around. It kind of has to load ballast so it can make the journey home if it's going home empty. Like, there's an amount of ballast that my brain needs so I can be all right.
Yeah.
Previously, I had, and that was in the form of stimulus. Previously, I had somewhat created that stimulus no matter what, and sometimes it was in a negative way and it brought great impact upon me and the people around me, but I've figured that out and I tend not to do it.
Yeah.
Now I have other ways to do it now, which is good. But, it took a while.
Yeah.
It took a while to learn. But yeah, that's kind of, I don't know how to do anything else.
I think it's nice that from such a young age you kind of knew where you kind of thrive most, and then how that looked kind of evolved with you, right? Like as you've grown. I think that's a really nice thing. A lot of people, it takes them a lot of years to find where they feel they thrive. And I also find it really interesting that you used work as that was when you were in control and kind of quote unquote safe.
At the start, yes.
Yeah. And outside it wasn't.
I didn't know where I thrived. Trust me.
Okay.
This was all me looking back and figuring it out and understanding, right, that's probably, I see the through line now. Mm-hmm. At the time, I was just doing the things that felt right.
Yeah, sure. You've been quite open about your journey with alcohol all the way through to sobriety. Can you share the moment you knew to yourself that alcohol was a problem? Was it a moment, or was it kind of like after a while?
Look, it's like, I think for some people they have that. But I think it's somewhat like the hero inventor myth, right? That it was one brilliant person who came up with this invention and then patented it and became a squillionaire. No, it was a team of 20, all right? And it wasn't really a moment. It does happen for some people, but it wasn't that for me. Alcohol, if you and I discovered alcohol today, all right, and we went, this is a great product, we're going to go to market, there's no fucking way they would launch it. They're like, hang on, mate, this is as carcinogenic as asbestos and nicotine and so addictive. You can't sell this. No way. But we're going to very craftily weave it into all kinds of cultural contexts, and we are going to very carefully couple it with ideas of masculinity, socialization, and meeting perhaps your, the next partner in life. We're going to put it on celebrations. We're going to put it at the beginning and end of life. We're going to whack boats over the front with it when we launch a boat. We're going to do all kinds of stuff with it. When we win a big motor race, we're going to spray it all over each other. When we win the NBA championship, we're going to wear ski goggles and throw it around the room. Oh, great then. No, they wouldn't launch it. Alcohol is a widely available, socially acceptable depressant, highly addictive depressant that is, as I said, it is as carcinogenic as asbestos. But you don't see any ditch diggers digging up the playgrounds in Sydney where we are right now, and also in Melbourne. They used mulch to build playgrounds, and this mulch has asbestos in it. And so they just only recently found this out, and they closed all the playgrounds. So the kids are like, well, why can't we go down the slide? It's like, So alcohol is this really easily available thing that people can access, and too often people use it to treat, issues with their headspace that initially you might think it does the job, but it's actually like a really terrible, terrible drug for you to put into your body if you're having those problems. And I know this from my own experience and also from the experience of others that are close to me. But that's exactly what it was, right? I think I was like, I don't know, I can't remember. I was in my mid-teens and I was a jumpy kid. I had huge self-conscious, huge body image issues, really, body dysmorphic, I was really overweight. And I was at a party, I can't remember where I was, but here was this magical elixir. And I had a drink of it and my brain was like, there it is. And suddenly I'm like, I don't mind being around these people. I feel okay being here. But the problem is with alcohol, it's a drug that you need a dose that needs to get bigger and bigger every time to have the same effect. Mm-hmm. Now, one of our kids has a peanut allergy. And if, you were having a birthday party or whatever for your kid and you say, come on over, I'd be like, all right, cool, but there's peanut allergy going on. They're like, oh, no worries, because everyone knows a child could die. All right, thankfully ours doesn't have a anaphylactic, but that can happen, right? But if this kid comes over to your house and they accidentally you've made a sandwich that had some peanut butter on it that morning. That's enough peanut to give a kid an anaphylactic shock so intense they'll stop breathing. And you're not about to say, hey, Jimmy, can you start breathing again? Can you unconstrict your throat muscles, please? Can you stop asphyxiating, please? They cannot stop the allergic reaction. So I have an allergy to alcohol. One molecule of that gets into my body, I break out and fuck with. Side effects include divorce, denial, financial ruin, losing your house, not getting a job anymore, all kinds of other things. And that all happened. But not everybody, I can eat enough peanuts. I can eat enough peanut butter that can kill a human.
Mm.
Doesn't mean that I want nobody to eat peanuts, right? Or I don't want people to not tell me to eat peanuts, right? That's not it. But some people aren't like that with alcohol. But if you are, you are, all right? The allergic reaction that I have is that if one molecule of this stuff gets into me, and bear in mind, early on, I was living in California for about 10 years, and people, hey man, I made my own kombucha. Do you want to try it? I've never tried kombucha. And they put fruit in it, and the fruit had fermented, even just the tiniest amount. Some kombuchas I can't do because there's tiniest amount of fermentation. That's enough to set it off. But what happens in me is that it changes how much I think is a good idea to drink, and it changes my sense of right and wrong. And my personal values just completely alter. And that stays that way until the effect of this reaction wears off. And that's when you get this idea of like, what did I do last night? I started having to get told because I couldn't remember. And I was like, wow, who would do that? I would do that. And I just couldn't get around that. And look, I'm a stubborn white Australian guy, and I think I was 22 the first time someone said, you really need to kind of watch. Why do you keep doing this to yourself? Was the question. It wasn't, you're going to have to stop. It was like, why do you do this to yourself all the time? Because it was bonkers. It took 14 years before I realised, I thought I was going to get a different ending. I'm just going to get the same ending everybody gets. And I could definitely tell that there's only one way this goes. There's a point where your reward system gets dysregulated, and the amount you need, like, I don't feel that great now. I reckon by there on the next one, that's when the party's really going to start, or that's when I'm going to feel better about my day. I'm this far down on the next one, but you never get there. All right, it just keeps elusively moving away from you. But it was like really obvious. The last night was no bigger or smaller than any other night. It was just another night of just being boorish and belligerent and vomiting on myself and embarrassing the people I was with and humiliating myself and others. And it was just, it was happening every time, and there was nothing I could do about it. The brain's really interesting. I had to learn a lot about brain anatomy and how brains work, because there's a part of your brain called the hippocampus, and that is involved in memory, and it connects your somatic memory, your emotional kind of feeling, with your essentially a historic memory. So you can have done something really that you regret, and you can feel badly about that, but you never make the connection that this action caused this feeling, because that's how we learn. All right, pain's an important. I've got this new documentary coming out about pain in a couple of weeks, and pain's really important. That's how we know if we've hurt somebody. Oh God, their face has just changed. Oh, I've hurt their feelings. I'm going to have to go say sorry. And that's why if you never connect the two, so you never learn. And that's why, I'm 50, but, until, I don't know, about 10 years ago, eventually it was when I stopped drinking, essentially. I stopped seeing this person. But they were the guy who they'd been getting kicked out of the pub for pulling their pants down on the pool table since they were 18. Because they never put it together that, the night ends and everyone has a bad time because I've got on the pool table and pulled my pants down or something. That's not what they did, but something like that. And they never put it together. And so you don't actually learn anything when you're drinking. So what happened is by the time I stopped drinking, I was 36. You basically start life again, and because now you can learn and start putting these things together. But I've got the emotional maturity and kind of, experience of a 14-year-old. So it was a rough journey.
Yeah.
But it's okay.
It's you were saying before how you used your career as you felt in control, and then the other 23 hours you'd be looking for ways to be in control.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say that alcohol was an attempt for you to be in control?
Alcohol was something that I was using to make the uncomfortable thoughts and feelings
numb.
Well, yeah, I was trying to use it to turn it down. Mm-hmm. But it turned it down, but it never made it go away.
Yeah,
all right?
Bit of a Band-Aid.
Well, not even. It's never a big enough Band-Aid. And the drinking when I was out and about was nuts. But it's the drinking when I was home alone, that's the proper stuff, right? Because nobody needs to know what I'm doing by myself. And the amount that I needed when I was home alone was just starting to get really, really bad and really dangerous, because the uncomfortable thoughts and feelings, I've got no one to talk to because people are frightening and I don't want to talk to anybody. But to turn the noise down in my head so I just feel okay, it was, and bear in mind at the time I was doing things with prescription medication that were so far off label that I've come to find out in later years it was probably called abuse. And so something was going to happen. There was benzodiazepines in my life, things like Valium and stuff like that. And it's happened to someone I knew. They were doing this kind of drinking and they had some, Valiums around because they're like, I normally take them before I go to sleep. And they had some, and then, because they're drinking so much, they forgot they had it. And so they turn around and they take another one. And then they just go to sleep and they just stop breathing. And that sort of shit was going to start happening. That was going to happen.
Yeah.
So I was lucky. I was really lucky that I could see where it was headed.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what to do. I knew I wanted to stop. I tried to stop a bunch of times, like many people, but I didn't want to accept that I was a person that needed to stop. I thought, no, actually, this time I'll be fine. But once that reward system gets dysregulated, once your brain gets dysregulated like that, it's you're like back to your old ways in a click of a finger.
Yeah.
And the best way to avoid that is to avoid it,
It sounds like through this journey to sobriety, like you've had to do a lot of inner work and learning about yourself.
Yeah.
So now when you kind of reflect as the difference as to where you are now, what do you turn to now for switching off, to unwind from your day? Like,
right.
What are your go-tos now that have replaced, let's say, drinking?
Look, I tell you, if breathing had as good a marketing campaign as the beer ads that ran in the 80s and 90s, which had my sporting heroes on fishing trips that had chicks in bikinis just drop out of the sky the moment they cracked the can, breathing would be a bestseller. First time I was taught how to do a box breath, I'm like, hang on, it was literally like that thing in the movie at the very, very end when they go, and you've been able to do this the whole time. Like, what? Did you fucking tell me that at the start of the film? I would have avoided a lot of shit. Like, first time I did a box breath, I was like, wow, like I've been able to do this since I was a kid? And it thrills me. Like, they teach kids in kindergarten now, in preschool. Like, my son's in daycare, they teach him down regulation breathing techniques.
That's great.
But there was none of that in Brisbane in the 80s or the 70s, whenever it was. So, it's unbelievable. Breathing's great. But physical exercise, control the things you can control. But the thing is, nobody can make any money from selling you this stuff because it's stuff you already know how to do, and there's certain small techniques. But if you jump right now, I can give you my PDF for $99.95. No, because if anyone's trying to sell you a PDF, fuck off. Like, you don't need to buy someone's self down regulation plan to know how to do stuff your body already knows how to do. Like, we're wired to do it. There are shortcuts, products that people can sell you that that can make it slightly quicker to get there, but ultimately then you become dependent on an external thing, and then you're putting your happiness and your ability to stay sane and be okay in the hands of somebody else, and that's not good. So for me, it's breathing, it's exercise, it's sleep, it's eating well, it is having a gratitude practice, which sounds like such a wank, but
You got to take your vitamin G.
Well, vitamin G, my God. Gratitude and mindfulness sound like you're going to need to buy a linen shirt and leave your crystals out under the moonlight. No, it's literally like, this is why you need gratitude, right? You and I are simply the descendants of the most jumpy, scared, frightened humans that existed. There were animals on Earth in Australia. There was a thing called a quincana, which is a 7-meter long land-based crocodile with huge fucking legs that lived until 10,000, 15,000 years ago when humans were here, all right? And the humans that heard a rustle in the bushes went, quincana, and they ran. They're the ones that survived. The ones that went, oh, look at the big lizard, they became lunch. All right, so they didn't live. The humans who were the most jumpy, most frightened humans were the ones that survived and they passed their genetics on. So we have that. We have a negativity bias. Mm-hmm. The ones who heard a rustle in the bushes and went, it's probably something that's here to kill us. All right, they're the ones that lived. Like, it's just the wind. But they went to danger first. So we have this thing inside our brains. We have a negativity bias. Makes a lot of money for reactive news organizations. And, the doom scrolling, there's a reason they call the negativity bias is what traps you in those scrolling, sessions. So if you have mindfulness and gratitude, what you're doing is you are counteracting that. And mindfulness is just simply noticing. That's all it is. Mindfulness is noticing. It's just taking a breath and notice things in the room. Notice how your feet feel inside your socks. Notice that stuff. Get used to that. I like to, when people ask me, it's like, do you like burpees?
Me? No.
Nobody likes burpees. No. Do you know why?
Why?
Because they're the most effective, nearly entirely full body exercise that you can do in a confined space. You do 100 burpees every day for 30 days, you'll transform your physical fitness. You'll transform your body composition. They suck.
Yeah, they do suck.
So the burpee for mental health is noticing. And just, I'm noticing. So if you're feeling, and all you do is put 2 words in front of it. Like if you're feeling a bit arcing, you feel like you're arcing up, you're like, I'm noticing I'm starting to arc up. The moment you do that, you're bringing your observing mind on board, all right? The thinking mind is like the Labrador chasing a Frisbee. Frisbee, 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 Frisbee. But the Labrador is chasing a Frisbee right onto a freeway. The observing mind can see it. But when you're riding your thinking mind, observing mind might be going, freeway, stop, buddy, stop. Can't hear it. You're too busy, too in it. Thinking mind's very powerful. So if you get practice bringing your observing mind on board, you're able to, once you kind of notice that thing, go, oh, look at that. I'm feeling really annoyed about this red light. I can feel my heart's racing a bit, my breath's changed a bit, hands are shaking a bit. Is me getting upset at this red light going to make this red light change? No. Okay. Rather than fucking traffic, because then what happens is you get home and then you're punishing the people that love and care about you.
Yeah.
So noticing is really, really, really important. Sleep, control the controllable. Sleep, have purpose, work with a purpose. Try to be of use to other people. We're wired to care for each other. There's a thing called the helper's high. It's proven by research. Anything that's got an alliteration or that rhymes, it sounds so cheesy, but like, they're real. One person versus one quincana, the person's lunch. 20 people versus one quincana. Everyone's having quincana steaks because 20 people cooperate. We're also the descendants of the ones that were able to form meaningful connections, rapidly form important bonds with people, and we're wired to cooperate and we're wired to help each other. And that's why we get a good feeling when we help another person, because it's how we survived. So in helping another person, there's a reason the Dalai Lama is so freaking happy, right? And Dalai Lama writes about this. Helping another person is, which is why in the sobriety circles, being of service is a really important thing because it's not about you and it actually feels really nice. And yeah, just go for a walk. You don't have to lift deadlifts and shit like that. I do it because it's
You love the barbells, but
I do. I also I used to play in metal bands and stuff, and we're in the quiet room, so I don't have to wear my hearing aids right now, but I'm deaf as shit. But that's my time. It's my time with my long bearded Viking boys to sing songs about dragons to me while I'm lifting heavy weights. But yeah, it's just look after yourself. And but you don't accidentally wander around and find yourself at the top of Mount Kilimanjaro, right? You have to deliberately pursue this. I had a six-pack once for 18 hours. I had a six-pack. It didn't happen by accident. Yeah. It was 10 weeks of weighing my freaking olive oil. It was very, very deliberate. But it's not a lot. If you make it a habit and you put it as a part of your day, it just happens. And if you do it regularly, you don't have to go back and triage. You can just, you give yourself the sense of resilience that you can get through life a lot easier if you don't have to go back and try and pull yourself out of things.
Yeah. I think we don't speak enough about just that simple act of observing, because purely by you going, I'm noticing this, it puts space between you and what's happening.
That's all you need.
Whereas when you're in it and emotional and it's controlling how you think and feel, you can't have that bird's eye view. And I never quite understood that. But what you just shared, I am thinking or I am feeling, just putting that before, I'm angry. Right? It just creates that buffer between. And it's really important to pull you out of stressful moments.
It's hard to do. You got to remember to do it.
It's a learn, it's a muscle.
Yeah,
you got to practice.
I still have to remind myself to do it. It's not like I'm some, super zen person. It's effort. It takes effort to do, but it's always worth it.
Absolutely.
It's always worth it.
If you guys are enjoying this episode so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future content. Let's get back into the episode. You also changed your name a few years ago, and I believe that was as a part of this kind of shift into, this new version of yourself where you've learned a lot and you've grown.
Yeah.
I find this quite interesting. I'd love to know, firstly, why you chose the name Osher, and secondly, I think people feel like they can never reinvent themselves, or maybe it's not about reinventing yourself, but just growing into another version of themselves. They're too old, they're too stuck, they're too, people make excuses for being where they are and not moving to where they want to be. So talk to me about the change in your name and how that's helped you kind of move into this next phase of you.
Well, both my parents changed their name. Right?
Okay, interesting. Was that just a personal choice?
Well, I'm an immigrant, but I'm white, so no one cares. But like many immigrants who came to Australia or moved to a English first language country, they anglicised their names because people were just stumbling. People could not pronounce Beruta Magdalena. It was Lithuanian names. Just call me Ruth, all right? And my dad, people couldn't pronounce it. He just call me Michael. All right, it was easy. It's like when you meet a guy who's just got here from, Guangzhou and he says, hey, my name's Jackie. It's not, all right? But Jackie's like, it's fine. It's unpronounceable and you'll just embarrass both of us if I tell you my actual name. So just call me Jackie. Sure. That's fine. It's not uncommon for people to change their names. I was never known by my actual name. I was known by nicknames my entire life. And then I got into FM radio where nicknames stick like shit to a blanket. So in the 90s, FM radio, nobody had their real name. Everyone's got a nickname. Some of them still carry it. It's like 20 years later because that was their brand. So they still hold on to these names. It's the poor people. And so I was never really known by my real name. And then I met this guy who said, look, if you change your name, you change your life. And I was like, well, all right, can't help, can't hurt. I might as well give it a shot. And I don't really believe in anything like astrology or anything like that. I don't believe in any of it. But the things he told me that day, I'm like, you've told me enough of stuff. I'm convinced enough. So I'll see what happens. But then when I did, and it did, I'm like, there must be something else going on here. There's certainly not some sort of mystical woo-woo stuff. So I've come to consider it a lot, and I think it's a lot to do with normative determinism. Calvin Broadhouse was just some guy, but when he was 18 and people started singing SNOOPDO, oh, nice job, Calvin, all right, Snoop Dogg, all right, O'Shea Jackson, he didn't have a good day, but Ice Cube sure did. All right, he saw the lights on the Goodyear blimp, and it said Ice Cube's a pimp, not O'Shea Jackson. Changing your name is a part of, you grow into what it becomes, and I'm one of millions of men, at least in this country, around the world, probably billions, who there's a name that only one person or two, three people call them, and it changes who they are. Their name is Dad. There's one person in the world that calls me that name. And when you get called that name, it changes how you are. It changes how you relate. Everybody changes that. I think at the end of grade 2, Miss Smith, happy summer, kids. She went off to summer. At the start of grade 3, Mrs. Carrington shows up. Same lady, different haircut, different clothes. Far different, like way lower skirts, all that kind of stuff. Like, oh, okay, it's that religious school I went to. So people change their names all the time. And for me, it was one of those things that really allowed me to put a line between someone who drank and used and someone on the other side of things. And yeah, an aggressive rebrand is important. It's funny because there's this documentary, we shot it a year and a half ago. And so I've got like mad blonde hair, you know. Like yesterday I had this gig where I'm, working with some different people. And so in the morning I said, hey, my wife's a makeup artist. Like, can you cut my hair? And so she gave me this rad mullet. Everyone can rebrand. Everyone can change themselves. And if you think you're stuck, just notice that in the amount of time it's taken me to say this sentence to you and me and everybody here has traveled the equivalent distance through space of Melbourne to Cairns. We are hurtling through space right now. If your phone says, 1 year ago when we were in this room, I think it's something like we're like 1.75 billion kilometres from where we were this time last year.
Wow.
We are constantly moving. We are like that saying, you never step into the same river twice. No river is the same 1 second to the next. No human is the same from 1 second to the next. I met my wife 10 years ago. There's maybe a few cells in my brain that's it. Every other thing that you're sitting in front of right now that has a name that other people call this name, this is all food that I have eaten that my body has turned into bits of me. Not one piece of me exists from 10 years ago when I first met her. And it's really important to remember that. We are constantly moving. We are constantly changing. That is what it is to be alive. And just remind yourself of that everything changes, everything moves. Nothing ever stays the same. And trying to fight that or trying to be sad that you think that's real is futile.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice reminder for people on so many levels, for people, females becoming mothers and going down that path, for people who, wish they were younger. Like there's so many ways we get stuck in versions of our old self, but reminding yourselves of the physical changes actually going on kind of just gives it that nice feeling of like moving forward. But I want to ask you about this in the context of a relationship. So with your wife, right? I think some people, my parents were divorced twice. And when
you were divorced twice.
So
they married
each other, divorced, remarried each other, re-divorced again.
Fuck me. No wonder you became a lawyer. You went, this is where the money is.
Yeah. I think I avoided family law. But
boy, that's a tough one.
But what I grew up thinking was, people grow and change and sometimes they're no longer compatible, right? Sometimes you just grow apart and that's fine. That was until I met my husband. And I realized that you can actually evolve together. What I want to ask you, because you've, just shared that you and your wife, you're different to you were 10 years ago.
Yeah.
How do you maintain your connection together whilst you're growing and evolving and changing as individuals?
Well, look, there's a very big difference between getting married and staying married. I'll tell you that for nothing. Like, it's beyond the idea of like, it's not a marathon. It's not it's a marathon, not a sprint. Like, far out, man. There's a lot of ways to go into this, right? But understanding that change is in everything is really, really important, all right? My big brother, I'm number 2 of 4 boys, and they're all far smarter and much more wise than I am. My big brother once told me that, and he got married pretty young, he was in his early 20s. He said, like, nobody has one relationship, all right? You have many, many, many relationships throughout the time you're together. People might get upset, like, it's not like it was when we met. Of course it wasn't, because you were in Bali and you were 24 and you could, stay in bed till 11 a.m. and have sex 4 times a day. And of course, everybody looked hot and you walking around with your, shirt off and your pants off and no one cared. It was brilliant. And now it's 15 years later and you got a mortgage and kids are sick and, work's unpredictable and the car's not working and the AC's busted and the power bill's going up and it's not like it was. Of course it's not like it was. And it's profound to even think you'd be upset about that. Everything changes. Everything changes. You have the relationship where when you're first, when it's just kind of pants ahoy, and then there's a moment where eventually after you stop rooting that you actually have to speak to each other, and then you realize, actually this person's got some things I'm interested in. They've got values that are common to mine. This is lovely. I can connect with them on this level as well. And then then it's the best sex you've ever had. You thought the last 6 weeks was good. Once you start using that as a way to communicate without words emotionally, boy, that's the stuff. And you go, now I'm here. Let's put a ring on it. Don't waste their time. Gentlemen, don't waste their time.
You heard it here first.
Don't waste their time, all right? If you don't think you're going to have kids with this person, don't waste their time. Be a man. Say, it's not for me, because that's a horrible thing to do. That's just a community service announcement brought to you by a man who knows. So, then there's the next stage where, I don't know, maybe you move in together and now you've got to figure out, and now there's the relationship where we're cohabitating. And my idea of what a well-packed dishwasher is different to another person's idea of what a well-packed dishwasher is. And is it important that I hold on to this idea? Or is it something that I can adapt with and work around? My idea of how much I would work, how much they would work, how much we would work together, of when kids might happen, when are we going to move somewhere, where we don't both want to go with work might grow and change, then it becomes very different. And so, if you get a couple years in, you've probably had 3 different versions of the relationship every year. You just need to constantly be communicating and redefining what that is. My wife recently, maybe about 6 months ago, started going back to work on a really quite intense level. And if there's 10 newsreaders in Australia full time, there's 8, maybe 7 people that do their hair and makeup. So they're very rare jobs. So my wife has one of those. Her alarm goes off at 2:45. Wow. But that's what she's doing. And so it's an intense job. So the relationship changes as far as care for the kids and, things around the house and stuff like this. So it's important to constantly be communicating and constantly redefining that. I was given some really, really good advice because after I got divorced, I was like, and it's really important you do this. If you've ever been through a really big breakup, the kind of one that really, really hurts for both of you, you got to take the time to figure out what your part to play was. You can't just go, oh, fuck them. It's
blame game.
You chose them and you chose to stay. So there is some responsibility there, man. Come on. So you got to do the work and you got to figure out, I did not want to ever put anybody else through that again. I didn't want to do that again. I didn't want to go about things that way again. So I did a lot of work and it was quite uncomfortable, but it was really important. And I still do that work, right? And then being in a relationship, if you're trying to heal from something in the past, truly the best place to heal is in a relationship, in a loving relationship. And during that period, I was told something enormously powerful, and it's that there's no such thing as the one. There's only the one who's willing to work on it with you.
That's beautiful.
And if you can find that person, and that person is kind, then lock that in. Absolutely lock that in. In this time where there is so much availability, and I spent a few horrible months on a swiping apps, and it was awful, awful. I can't imagine what it's like to do that. I've met men in their late 20s who've never introduced a woman to their parents. It's just this endless string of 6 week, 7 week long relationships. But the moment they hear, what are we? They think they're winning the game, but all they're doing is playing the first level again and again and again and again. They do speed runs. They think they're that good. And all that, from the group chat makes them think, yeah, I'm winning. No, you're not. You're just trapped.
Yeah.
And you're doing a lot of other people are taking hit points for you, mate. And it's not okay. What's going to happen is you're going to be the guy standing in the corner of the club with old face and young hair wondering what happened.
Yeah.
All right. You're missing out on the chance to grow yourself. And being challenged beyond that initial kind of pants ahoy period, being willing to go, well, hang on, maybe I'm not God's gift to woman. Maybe I actually do have a few things about me that need to get sorted out. Maybe these would be better if I didn't walk forward with these. Maybe I could find another way to be. That's how you grow. And being 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 if you find the right person. 1 + 1 equals a million, right? Who you get to be, who you get to grow and become is amazing and well worth it. And you certainly as a man, I think it's very important that you can't be what you can't see, right? Which is why I started talking about, mental illness and started talking about addiction, because I didn't know what it looked like. So I'm just it was only once I saw people who were where I wanted to be, that had been where I was, that I was like, oh, maybe there is another way to do this than the way I'm doing it. And similarly, I think it's really important that we need to start modeling masculinity in a way that gives men a feeling that they are okay, all right? In the last few years, it bothers me greatly that normal aspects of masculinity, normal, naturally occurring aspects of what it is to have a lot of testosterone being labeled in a negative way. Well, what does that do if you're a young man? It drives you into the corners and the darkness. All you want to do is for someone to say you're okay. And the people that you're finding that are saying you're okay, well, they're the ones that want to sell you some pretty weird PDFs, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
And that causes some pretty strange little echo chambers of weirdness. And I'm not saying anything that nobody realizes. It's causing a lot of problems in our community. Modeling what mature masculinity looks like and what fatherhood looks like and what leadership looks like from a masculine perspective is enormously important. 9 people will die by suicide today and 7 of them will be men. If I said to you, 49 people are going to die this week and next week from plane crashes, you'd close every airport. But we don't, and that's awful. So it's really important to talk about this and kind of, at least show what masculinity can be. That isn't, because it's been, I eat what I kill, or I'm some sort of beta cuck. There's no, what? That's not life. But there's other aspects to it, know? And it's important.
Yeah, no, I think the conversation of modern masculinity is important. I think there's a lot of different verticals of what that looks like today. But if we dilute it back to what you said, in a relationship, I think what you said is really beautiful. And I think for people that are hung on it's not what it used to be, if we look at what you said, it actually makes it really exciting because there's so many iterations to come where you're going to grow and evolve together. Yeah. And that's actually quite exciting.
I wouldn't want it to be what it used to be.
Yeah, you've had that.
I wouldn't want that. Because that's not
where you are.
What's available to you, the growth and learning and rich experience of life that's available to you once you start to truly commit. And because it takes enormous, I'm going to talk to my dad about this when I first moved in with someone, the first time I ever moved in with someone. It's like, and he said, well, it's what makes it worth it, right? It's what makes it worth it. You fall in love deeply because the idea that it could go away at any moment is also there at the same time. You can't have one without the other. You have to be okay with that, all right? The day your kids are born, like when Georgia came into my life, she was 10. I've never loved anyone like I've loved this child. She's changed everything. One day she's my girlfriend's kid. The next day it's everything is now about, I just have to make sure that everything you ever wanted in life is yours. I would push you out of the way of a bus if it meant I died. Right? That it's enormously important to have that. But then they get their license and then you're like, but you have to be able to hold these two things in the same time. It's you're this incredible child, you're an amazing human being. You could die. But you can't have one without the other, right? Similarly, you can't be in love without being able to be with this could end. You have to have both.
It gives it that worth.
Well, yeah. And if you find yourself not being in a deep enough in your relationship that you find yourself isn't shallow, you may need to look at how prepared you are to be with it might end. But you got to understand that even if your kid does die, even if you do get broken up with, you'll cope. You'll be okay. All right? And it'll suck. It'll be really hard. It'll be super sad, and it'll take a long time to get over. But it'll be all right. You'll figure it out. And it's not to say that, they're meaningless, not at all, but you'll get through it. Because squillions of people have, right? But you may be afraid of that because you don't know what it looks like, and so you're avoiding that kind of commitment because you don't want that heartbreak. But you'll be all right. Yeah. You will. You will.
Well, I really appreciate how you open up very vulnerably about what you're going through, your thoughts on masculinity,
Is it vulnerable?
your struggles.
I don't think I'm being vulnerable at all.
No?
No. If anything, I think I'm being quite confident. I think I am.
Do you think you can't be confident in being vulnerable?
Oh, no, I didn't say that. I just don't think there's vulnerability. I don't know. I think in the same way that you can't have vulnerability without resilience. They're two sides of the same coin. All right?
Agree.
Vulnerability without resilience is fragility. And resilience without vulnerability, well, that's like, I don't know, just becoming such this kind of hard-walled object, but is ultimately fragile because the smallest ping, it'll shatter. All right? But nothing can get in and nothing can get out. So it's this kind of being in this space of, like, if I'm able to open up like this or speak to you like this, I'm able to do so because I have resilience, and like I know I have nothing to lose by sharing this stuff, and I know that I am being of service to somebody watching or listening to this who might not have heard people speak like this before. I have no fear speaking like this, and that's it. I don't think it's vulnerability. It's not an animal lying on its back, exposing its belly to attack. That would be fragility. So yeah, I don't know. We've got to find a different word.
Well, maybe thank you for your openness today and for sharing your experience.
I'm grateful to.
No, I really appreciate it.
I'm grateful to because, like I said, I didn't know what it looked like, and I'm grateful that I'm able to. I'm just trying to give other people what I needed.
Yeah, I'm sure you've helped absolutely more than one person listening.
I hope so.
And I really appreciated learning from you today. So thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, no, thank you.
And I'm looking forward to seeing your documentary when it comes out.
Oh, that's the second one. It turns out if you win a massive fuck off award for your first documentary, it makes the second one a bit easier to get off the ground.
Oh, well, yeah. Fingers crossed you get the award.
Well, it's not about the awards. It's the process goal, mate.
Yes,
come on.
Of course.
It's the process goals.
But we want to see the second and the third,
well,
so we can help you in the process.
Goals. If my process goal is to make great documentaries, or to work great with great people about things that are important, then that's it. If the award happens, the award happens.
Love that. Well, thank you again for your time. It was really nice chatting with you, Osher.